All right, what I want to ask you all about is how many of you have been keeping festival now for 52 days? Some of you yes, some of you no. Okay, see? For the unbelievers here in the this is a chart. This red section is Passover, just one day. In fact, it's the 14th day, but the service is only like an hour and a half, 2 hours in the evening at the beginning of the 14th. But as soon as the 14th ends, begins the 15th, which is the first day of unleavened bread, which is 7 days. So far, here you've got 14th plus 7, you've got 8 days. Then this year, Saturday was the first day of unleavened bread. Sunday was the first day of Pentecost, right? The Feast of Weeks. So, 52 days of continuous festival. Now, some of you are surprised, but that's okay, because I was in the church for many years. I may have even been a minister for a couple of those years, and it didn't dawn on me that there wasn't a huge gap between unleavened bread and Pentecost. And then it dawned on me that the name of the festival isn't really Pentecost. How many of you got a better name for Pentecost than Pentecost?
Count 50.
Count 50. What did you say? Feast of Weeks.
Feast of Weeks.
Feast of first fruits of the wheat harvest, right? Okay, so at Passover we remember and we commit to serving Christ for one more year, but it's mostly we connect to what He did. And then we commit because of what He did. He's the roots, He's the vine that we're going to be connected to. And so we honor Him, we reverence Him, we worship Him, we thank Him for His sacrifice, and we commit, as we did at baptism, to go one more year in service of Christ. During unleavened bread, we eat of the knowledge, I am the bread of life, He said, I came down from heaven. We eat, He who feeds on me, remember, we eat of the knowledge of the true bread of life, and we commit to resisting sin practices for 12 more months. Now we come to the end of the Festival of Weeks. Pentecost means the 50th in Greek. So in the New Testament, when you see Pentecost, they were saying, and when the 50th day arrived, and when I saw that, I went, so where are the 49? It's like, well, if you read it carefully, Leviticus 23:15 says, you shall count for yourselves. And I went, that ain't right. I've been in worldwide all these years. The ministry do the counting. No, we don't have to do the counting. Count for yourselves, it said. Oh, that's new, right? And seventh day, 7 Sabbaths will be complete. Well, last night when the sun set, 7 Sabbaths were complete. And the celebration comes on a Sunday, right? And you celebrate today on a Sunday the fact that 49 days are finished, right? But in most cases, we don't make a connection between the 50th day and unleavened bread. But in fact, what we were doing during unleavened bread, for 6 of the 7 days of unleavened bread, we were keeping 2 festivals at the same time. But we didn't pay any attention to Pentecost because we were busy doing unleavened bread. And, you know, we're humans. It's like, hey, don't ask me to do too much. I'm just focused here on bread. Not eating bread, you know, special bread. Okay, God explains the name for this festival in Exodus 24:22. He said, you shall observe the Feast of Weeks. Obviously, 7 full weeks, 7 complete periods have gone by. Passover was just one 24-hour day. Unleavened bread was a complete 7-day section of time. And then we have 7 complete sections of time. Every Sabbath, we're into the 7th day, and we're completing the 7 days of the week, and then we start another 7 days. So, in Leviticus 23, he said, you count for yourselves to the day. Feast of Weeks, Feast of First Fruits of the wheat harvest. So, in Israel, where we don't live anymore, right? Maybe we'll be living in the future, but probably not in fleshly bodies. right? In Israel, there's an early barley harvest, which is the beginning of the wave sheaf day, the early barley. Then it's followed by the wheat harvest, and the wheat harvest ends about this time of year in Jerusalem. And so all of the Israeli people in Palestine and Israel, they knew that there was an early harvest, and then there was the summer harvest ending around the 7th month. So the large summer harvest ends in the 7th month, and we have 4 festivals in the 7th month. But notice, the first of the 7th month is a singular day. It can fall, it falls on whatever day of the week it falls on. So that's the first day of the 7th month, we do trumpets. And then we count to 10, and we do atonement. It can fall on whatever day it falls on. And it's all by itself. It's not connected to anything. And then comes the Feast of Tabernacles on the 15th, and it's connected to the 8th day. So 2 of those festivals are not connected to anything. And I used to think that Pentecost wasn't connected to anything. But I'm wrong. I hope you'll see eventually that it's one complete. This year, today is day number 52. You say, no, but it's the 50th day. It's Pentecost. It's the 50th day of the 3rd festival, but we've had continuous festival days now for 52 days. It's like, all right, but there's no visible thing to do. How do we celebrate the 50th day, folks? What are we going to do today? We're going to eat. What are we going to eat? We're going to eat wheat, right? We just have a potluck, because when we're not sure how to celebrate, we just eat. That's how we celebrate, right? Anyhow, God is saying, you know, the 50th day has come. You're now celebrating the fact that 7 sevens are complete. Get excited. It's like, tell me more. I don't have enough yet to get excited about. So God uses the 2 harvests to show that spiritually what He is doing down here on planet Earth is He is working through 2 harvest periods of human history, right? And we are the first fruits of the first harvest period. But once the first harvest period ends with the Day of Trumpets, the second harvest period begins immediately. And which is the biggest of the harvests, folks? The second one. How much bigger is the second one than the first one? It's humongous, right? Because all of those people who died before the flood, they didn't know there was a Jesus. They didn't have Bibles. They were just kind of like people are today. They have Bibles, but they ignore them, right? But they're lost. They're just wandering around in circles. Jesus teaches that He is the Lord of the spiritual harvest. Matthew 9:38. Therefore pray to the Lord of the harvest. I hope we do this frequently. Pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into His harvest. And I got to thinking about that, and I decided that I would also pray, Lord, help us keep the laborers we already got. They're getting old. Our laborers are getting old. Lord, help us keep the ones we got. Stretch them out another couple of years. Because if they go, we're going to have a mighty big shortage of laborers. You know, and so we need, when you see a laborer coming, grab them. Gently say, oh, come over here. We've got work for you to do. Right? Jesus shows that the spiritual harvest is happening amongst the people of this world. Now, we all go, they're all crazy. And we're the only ones who are, you know, people are in church today, but they don't know it's Pentecost. They haven't got a clue it's Pentecost, right? Matthew 13:37, He said, He who sows the good seed is the Son of Man, Jesus. The field is the world. There's a harvest going on in the field, which is the world. The good seed are the sons of the kingdom. That's us. We're the sons of the king, sons and daughters of the kingdom. The tares are the sons of the wicked world, the wicked one, and we got lots and lots of people who do not want to follow what God is teaching them. Verse 39, the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age. Trumpet, seventh trumpet. You know, Christ returns on the seventh trumpet. So Jesus is using the first early harvest to explain the first salvation period. Right? And he said, you know, in Hebrews 2:10, it was fitting for him, bringing many sons, children into glory by A, the early harvest, and then B, the latter harvest. But Jesus is all about harvesting, harvesting, harvesting. And, you know, you would say, well, he's not doing very well because the church is so small. Well, he knew that. He knew that very few people would really want to know the truth. And then he knew that fewer people still would stay faithful until death. In Romans 8:21, because the creation itself will be delivered from the bondage of corruption. If you turned on your TV this morning, you saw part of the bondage of corruption. Like 50 people were gunned down. No, let's see. Maybe 100 people were shot, 50 people are dead down in Orlando. Right? The creation itself will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. That's the end of the first smaller harvest. Right? Paul shows the element of this first harvest process. Romans 8:22, we know that the whole creation groans. Do you groan when you turn on the TV, if you did this morning, and hear what was going on? Does that cause you to groan? When they shot the people in Paris, did you groan? Did you want to stop this corruption on planet Earth? Remember, one of the promises is the first fruits get to be rulers over the nations. And I've heard back in worldwide days, I'm not sure I heard much since then, but it was, I don't want to be a king or a ruler. I just want to get there. It's like, well, I want to rule. I want to rule ISIS like yesterday. Right? Right now I don't have the power to rule ISIS, but you know, that sort of thing will not happen in the kingdom. Verse 23. Not only that, but we also who have the first fruits of God's Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves. Do you find yourself groaning at the state of the world? You know, it's crazy. Yeah, and now we got nuclear weapons, and we get more and more nations with nuclear weapons, and the idea of it, oh, nobody will shoot one. Yeah, sure. It's like, anyhow, that guy up in North Korea, anyhow, you know, when's his next birthday? You know, whatever. Okay, so we groan within ourselves, eagerly awaiting the adoption or the sonship and the redemption of our body. So the points A in that verse above, we have the Spirit, be connected to God's Holy Spirit. We wait for sonship. We eagerly wait for sonship, and you know, the sooner it gets here, the better. And you know, basically, there's two ways to get there. One is die before Christ returns, and the other one is still be alive when Christ returns. And then the third part is to get our new bodies. God is using the first spiritual harvest process to prepare kings and priests for the second, much larger spiritual harvest. It's like, why is he doing the small harvest? Why is he making kings and priests? Right, Revelation 5:10, and have made kings and priests to our God, and we shall reign on the earth. We, the first fruits harvest people, will be the laborers for the big harvest, for the 1,000 years in preparation. Just how many people do you think are coming up in the second resurrection? Anybody want to throw out a number? Come on, give me a trillion or a billion or something. A billion. All right. How many?
A trillion.
A trillion. Okay. So, when Jesus resurrects a trillion people, where are they going to sleep that night? What are they going to eat that night? We have to prepare for them, don't we? But we'll have human slaves, right? Because we'll be spirit-being bodies, but there will be people who live over into the millennium, And what do they have to do? Raise tomatoes, build log cabins, milk the goats, right? Sit under their fig trees. So we put them to work in preparing for the trillion people. I don't know how many it is, but there's a lot of people coming out of the grave. So we will be the laborers during the second gigantic harvest period. So you can never just say, and I think I've heard people indicate this, well, I'm the first fruit spirit. I'm God's first fruits. And that's all that counts. Well, not according to what Jesus said. He said, I am the Lord of the harvest. And then if you look closely, there's 2 harvests. So do you suppose once he's got the first harvest, he'll say, that's enough, let's walk away from the earth? No! All those promises, the lion will eat straw like an ox. The promises are, he is going to convert billions and billions, trillions of people into his family. Sadly, out of this first 6,000 years, small number. But that small number is going to have power, right, in the kingdom. You'll be able to read the thoughts. Have you ever wanted to read the thoughts of a teenager? I have, right? And you look in their face and you can see from their face they're angry. But you can't read exactly what they're thinking. Once you're in the spirit world, you'll be able to read what they're thinking. You say, I wouldn't be thinking that if I was you. Well, how do you know what I'm thinking? You are thinking, oh. Now what am I thinking? All right. Yeah, it'll be good. We'll have power to help them. Right? So before humans can enter God's kingdom, they must practice 2 words of spiritual harvesting. Who wants to tell me what those 2 words are?
Overcoming.
Isn't that one word? It's a good answer. 2 words. 2 words.
And putting on Christ.
How many words is that? All right. The 2 words are spirit walking. If you don't spirit walk, you won't be in the kingdom. Right? Romans 8:1. There is there now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus, who do not walk according to the flesh. Look out the window, look as you're driving down the road, look on TV. You see millions of people walking according to the flesh. And the results are not pretty. Right? But according to the Spirit. Romans 8:4. The righteous requirement of the law. Wow. So the law wasn't done away with then. There is a righteous requirement of the law. Might be fulfilled in us who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. Galatians 5:16. I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. The more you're walking in the Spirit, doing what you see God wanting done, righteousness, the less interest you have in the things of the lusts of the flesh. Verse 25, Galatians. If we live in the Spirit, what does that mean? Let us also walk in the Spirit. Paul, what are you doing? If we're living in the Spirit and we're walking, then surely we're walking in the Spirit. No, because once we are baptized into the truth, God gives us the earnest of the Holy Spirit. We start showing up on the radar in heaven. We are now part of God's spiritual family, but we need to grow. The growing part is the walking in the Spirit. These last 50 days have been the Walking in the Spirit Festival. And you could say, well, why is it so big? We did 7 days of eating unleavened bread and avoiding eating leavened products, and it was just this little teeny tiny piece of time. How come we got this huge piece of time for walking in the Spirit? We have no visible symbols to help us. If we laid out 50 little glasses of orange juice, we put them in the fridge, we number them all, 1 through 50, right? And every day we went to the fridge and we went, day number 1, okay. Day number 2, okay. We'd feel good because we would be doing something physical, a physical symbol. But are we going to be physical people in the resurrection? We're going to be spiritual people. So he wants us to start thinking spiritually. And walking in the Spirit is a spiritual activity. You can't do a physical symbol that shows you how you're walking in the Spirit. It has to be done in your brain. It has to be done by how you choose to make decisions. Each year the Father and Jesus remind us of growing into the kingdom process, which is a small piece of connecting to Jesus. We do that on Passover. A bigger piece, eating of the knowledge of Christ. And that doesn't take very long. How long did it take you to learn the Sabbath? Not very long. The holy days, not very long. The 10 Commandments, doesn't take very long to learn that. The knowledge is the short part. The doing of the knowledge is the long part. The mental, spiritual activity of actually doing. So we have to grow by His Spirit. Romans 8:9. But you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if indeed the Spirit of God dwells, i.e. functions in you. Now, if anyone does not, and you might look at the notes on this one, if anyone does not have the Spirit, he is none of His. And for some reason, I looked at the Greek behind the word have, and it's the word to hold. Have is kind of bland. If anyone does not hold to the Spirit of Christ, he is none of His. And is there anybody here who has been baptized, gone to church, kept Sabbath with brethren, kept festival with brethren, kept Pentecost with brethren, and then they stopped holding on to the Spirit of Christ? Anybody? Yeah, there's lots of us that knew people who were doing what we're doing now and then stopped doing it. They stopped holding on to the Spirit of Christ. So to enter Christ's kingdom, we must function by walking in the Spirit and always be bearing Spirit.